Hello and welcome to another episode of Quarterlight. Today is March the 20th and a snow melting plus 5 degrees C. Welcome to spring. Today we're going to be looking at the great Land Rover One Ten, a vehicle that would become the Defender once the Discovery arrived. So sit yourself down, immerse yourself in a large cup of tea and enjoy another episode of Quarterlight. Okay, so here it is, the Land Rover Defender One Ten. But this brochure itself is a very interesting and quite historical brochure. It's not in the best condition. There's a few little corners that you can see are curled up. It's not a particularly big brochure. It's only a fold-out brochure. But as we see in a moment, it's a very historical and just shows the beginnings of the 110 and how it became. The Land Rover 90 and 127 came later than this brochure, so we are just looking at the 110. It was developed from the series vehicles and they were first launched in 1948, so certainly a need for a change. Production began in 1983 as we can see here, the Land Rover 110. 110 referring to 110 inch of the wheelbase. The following year became the 90 came out and the 127. Noticeable changes from the Series 3 were the full length bonnet, which I think is probably the most noticeable. You can see at the front there, as well as that full windscreen rather than the split. Other changes were the revised grille and the wheel arch extensions. Huge improvements that you can't see on the pictures. Coil springs were launched to replace those horrendous antiquated cart springs that gave such an uncomfortable ride. Also permanent four-wheel drive, a modernised interior, also showed great improvement from the series vehicles. So why did this come about? Well, as we've touched on, there was a need for change. The series vehicles, it gone all the way back to the 40s when they first started being developed as the Series 1, but even the Series 3 had some very old and needed much improvement in the modern times. This was also shown in a huge decline in the sales of the Series 3. In fact, 21% fall in between 1980 and 1981 was huge. This new vehicle reversed that decline. The growth was mainly in the domestic UK and European markets, which shot straight up. One of the sad things are the African and Australian and even the Middle East market failed to recover. A lot to do with reliability and build issues of the Series 3 meant that it never really returned to what it was, by which time the Nissan Patrol to a lesser extent, but certainly the Toyota Land Cruiser had taken over that market with a much more reliable and well-built vehicle. And we always think about Toyota as being this very reliable vehicle, so that's always in our mind when we're in these remote parts of the world, although to a certain extent even the Toyota Land Cruiser wasn't a perfect vehicle. So let's have a look at the brochure and see what we can see about this particularly interesting one. So this particular brochure is, like I say, a very early one. It's dated February 1982. And like I said, the 110 officially wasn't until 1983. And this brochure really shows some of the early carryover from the Series 3, which we'll have a look at now. So we'll open it up. At the top here, it shows 4 of the different versions that the 110 came in. Here's the station wagon, This is the high capacity pickup, the hard top and the soft top. There was also a fifth one as well, which it doesn't show on this front cover, which is just the standard pickup. So if you open up, and like I say, it's not nothing special particularly about this. It's just a very basic fold-out brochure, but it certainly shows some of the changes that had not actually happened yet. Like I said, some of the carries over from the previous model. Now, if you see, and I'll zoom into this, the first thing you see is are the windows. Not yet had they become wind down. These were actually still the sliding windows that we saw in the Series 3. So we'll have a look at that now. So here we come. I've kind of zoomed in as much as I could on this particular high capacity pickup. Sorry it's a little bit wobbly in zooming, but you can see there the sliding windows, which was the carryover from the Series 3. That was soon moved over to the wind down windows. And the other thing that's very unusual, and something we really forgot about, because like we mentioned before, the 110 introduced permanent four-wheel drive. Now in this brochure, being a very, very early brochure, it says there's another option, and I'll just read it for you now. It says the 2.25 litre models have new 5-speed gearboxes with single-layer selection of high-low range gear ratios, which effectively give them 10 forward and 2 reverse gears. Permanent four-wheel drive is standard on 110s for 2.25 litre models. Selectable to four-wheel drive is available. So on these very early 110s, you could actually get a selectable four-wheel drive system. This was very soon dropped. It wasn't popular. Not many people took that up, so it did become a permanent four-wheel drive system. So that's quite interesting on this early brochure. It does show them sliding windows and that selectable four-wheel drive that was only available on the very early 110s. Something that we've forgotten about, but it's nice to see that there is a brochure showing them very early parts. The other things I liked about these 110s, and also the 90s as well, it was carried over for a few years. They did have these galvanised front bumpers, which I think are far better than the steel painted ones that came later, and also the Defender had. The other nice thing, which is quite hard to see on this brochure, I must admit, but all the edges were in galvanised metal as well, rather than the painted metal that came later. And also you can see a little bit on here, might not be able to pick it up too well. It also had these kind of like galvanized steps on here as well. These were just steel and painted later. Of course, this is kind of like showing one of the weaker points of Land Rovers was this all steel chassis. The body itself was made of aluminium, and where steel ever meets aluminium, you always get that sort of bubbling and corrosion taking place. The chassis itself did rust, particularly this cross member. They tended to rust quite bad. It was big, thick metal, so it did last a long time, but it's not unknown as to get a replacement cross member there. The rear cross member can be changed on them, and some people even rebuilt them on fully galvanized chassis. So that's the main points of this brochure. Like I say, we had the station wagon. The County did not come on this very early model. You also got the high capacity pickup. This is the standard pickup on there, and there's a little bit of a drawing which kind of shows the station wagon. Later on, it became the county station wagon, the kind of like top of the range one, which was trying to take it away from its very agricultural life on the farm to being a more I don't say luxurious, but it had a few more sound deadening and maybe a carpet in there, and they were 10-seaters. So this was kind of like the start of the move towards the Land Rover venturing out of the farmer's field to becoming more of a vehicle that you could use on the road. And indeed, with being a coil spring suspension, it certainly was a nicer ride than what you got on a Series 3. Moving over to, and this is a nice picture of the station wagon as well in green here. Again, the graphics changed a lot later on in the later models. Still had the handles from a Series 3, very basic. They became more of a standard handle later, and also a lock to lock the bonnet was all at the front here, showing Land Rover 110 at the front there. Later on, obviously, you had the Land Rover 90 and 127 that it said there. This was, of course, later changed just to say the word Defender. And at the back page here, it's showing the specifications. The soft top, the pickup, the hard top, the station wagon, and that high capacity pickup. There was only 3 engine choices on these very early ones, and these were the same as the series vehicles. The 2.25 petrol, the 2.25 diesel, and the 3.5 V8. As we've mentioned, they were coupled to the 5-speed gearbox with that high and low ratio, permanent 4-wheel drive, and at these very early 110s, it was also a selectable 4-wheel drive system that you could option. Later on, around about 1984, so the following year, the 90 and the 127 became available. This is also when we got the normal wind down windows, so these were replaced from these sliding ones on these very early 110s. And also a 2.5 litre diesel became available in 1984, and kind of like the 2.5 diesels became the norm all the way to the end of the Defender's line, although much improved from these early ones. Well, I hope you enjoyed this brochure as much as I do. Like I said, it is a great glimpse of the early beginnings of the coil-sprung Land Rovers. I think it's quite a historical brochure, although like I say, it's not in the best condition. It's certainly a nice one to have in the collection. Around about 1989, like we've looked at a previous video, the Discovery was introduced, and then later on the 110 name and the 90 name became the Defender 110 and Defender 90, just so it had a name like the Discovery. Although basically you can see it basically looks very much the similar sort of vehicle. Not much was changed on the outside, although there was huge improvements in the diesel engines in particular. Again, it's been nice to have you, and coming soon we will indeed look at a Defender brochure and see how that's changed. So thank you, take care, like and subscribe if you will, that would help me greatly, and we'll see you soon. Take care.